joy. Now I have the pleasure of introducing a great friend of mine, Eric Truelove. Now I moved to Wisconsin about 24 years ago, and sustainability that has always been difficult is the HVAC, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Didn't quite cover it to the extent that I needed to get to that next level of sustainability. And in asking around, I quickly found who we would do a building together, and he would give me an energy model based off a few of my line drawings. And then because Eric didn't want to promise anything to people that he couldn't, that he knew he couldn't, that he wasn't sure 1000% that he could do. And we would find routinely that he would be 1 to 2 to we were bringing in 2 and 3 times as much air as required by code. This is building and needed to be treated with the utmost care. And we're also going to save energy. Had with me was about the history of air requirements in buildings and how that was a mistake. Now that was basically, you know, a couple of years after EPA and the Marine Corps both found out this a problem with the people that were inside. 2 people, you know, 2 groups that couldn't be on more opposite sides of what they do on a given day, but they were finding the same thing. This is 1978, 79, that the buildings, we had sick building syndrome. Done with him have been my best, and it's become of him. It's because of him. And I know this, I've seen this talk he's about to give. It's very entertaining. It's very important. And thank you. Eric?
Always nice to start off on. You saw, oh, I hope you like it. There are 2 things that happen whenever Josh asked me to give a presentation, which I'm always very grateful for. Number 1, I know the person he really wanted to have present turned him down. I bring up a lot of controversial things. He sees me as being entertaining, so he brings me in. And we also have this ongoing agreement that if the people I'm presenting to become an angry crowd carrying torches, that so we still have an agreement, right? Good. So I am going to bring up things that are controversial. And I know we kind of live in an age where everybody thinks their opinion is the only opinion, and anyone who doesn't believe as they do is an enemy of some kind. And I don't believe that. Yeah, that's fine. I will be interested to hear what you have to say as well. This is based on over 40 years in the oh, there we go. Okay. I'm going to give you a brief background on global warming. Coal, natural gas, oil. And unfortunately, this carbon dioxide does not reabsorb very quickly. Absorb it. And the levels have gone up during industrialization from 250 parts per million, now we're up to 400 parts per million, which doesn't sound like much, but it has made a difference. Because according dioxide is a greenhouse gas. It traps more solar heat. Less solar energy is reflected out of the atmosphere, and that causes the temperature to rise. And they're saying it again and again, saying, and we have the data showing that it appears to be doing is that the overall average temperature of the Earth has gone up a little over 1.5 degrees in the last century. Doesn't sound like much, does it? I mean, I could change the temperature in this room by a degree. Well, the problem is that even a small change in temperature means you have fewer days like that and far more days like 1/2 degree though. Well, if you take the mass of the atmosphere and you say, how much energy isn't just would it take to raise the atmosphere's temperature all around the Earth, 1.5 degrees, well, humankind hasn't produced that much energy, electric energy, in the last and it probably will, because the carbon dioxide we're releasing is not being absorbed as fast as we are releasing. Doesn't matter what we do. The issue is how much worse. And that's why I'm thinking that this is something we've got to start looking other than what we've been doing up till now. Yeah. Bear with me. Here. Politics. That's an F5 tornado. Don't you think that's nice and symbolic? Now, politics in America has always been contentious. Steroids. And it shows no sign of abating. We have the people on what we call the right, we have the people on what we call the left, and then we have the two people in the middle who haven't made up their mind yet. And is there a common ground? Well, if you look at the people on the right, they'll do things like wave flags with rattlesnakes on it saying, don't tread on me. That's a clear message, right? Going to the government, don't mess with me, government. And then you have the people on the left who say, the government that governs best is the government that governs least. But that's nice. You see, there's this absolute agreement about government. We don't trust them. And not only don't we trust everything. I can't find a good job. What's the government doing? The cost of things is too high. What's the government up to? Oh, look at what I'm paying for gasoline. What's the government doing wrong? Not do that created that. We blame the government. It's all the government's fault. So what happens is that we get this wonderful churn in Washington. Every 2 years, we replace a party in either. Easy to do. We've got problems. Who's in office? It's their fault. Oh, how convenient. The party that's seeking on and on. What's that got to do with global warming? Unfortunately, everything. Going to take probably 30 years to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels onto fuels that do not create more greenhouse gases. Keep in mind, we've been great 15 We have to think of a program so what is currently, whoops, come on, I can't see that. We're going to tax fuels that give off carbon. As gasoline and electricity become more expensive. And as we know, people then and use less of them. In addition, we're going to take that money and use it to buy sustainability, more renewable energy, and so forth. And by the way, that's what they're doing in Europe. What's the problem with that? My first response, this isn't Europe. This is America. You want to know how we feel about taxes? Recognize that picture from your history books? We hate taxes. You couldn't do a better job of jumping into that F5 tornado than to say, let's have a new tax. People in Europe pay anywhere from 25 to 50% of their money in taxes, and they largely don't complain about it. They talk about how wonderful it is that the government provides for their retirement, provides for their health care, provides for their defense. I know, what's their problem? We know better than that. We on the average pay 15%, and that's way too much. We are not a nation that appreciates taxes. And yet this is what they're saying we're going to do, a carbon tax. Not only are they going to do it, but they're going to keep that in place for 30 years. Really? Let's see how that's going to work out. You know, we already had a dry run. Back in the 1990s, President Bill Clinton, who was president for 8 years, tried to pass and failed to pass what he called a BTU tax, a tax on all energy sources, just like the carbon tax. He tried for 8 years to pass that and failed. Despite the fact that during his presidency, we had record low unemployment, record low inflation, record low interest rates, and record low energy costs. I can still remember driving to Chicago, going to the Oasis and seeing the sign out on the mobile saying 98.9 cents a gallon. Even back then, what a bargain. I topped off the tank both ways. Didn't matter. He couldn't get it through. Oh, and by the way, during his presidency, the federal government had surpluses. Now, you may want to Google what that is. Just trust me when I tell you it's a really good thing. Didn't matter. He couldn't get his BTU tax passed. Now, to make things even more interesting, his wife, Hillary Clinton, comes along years later, running for president, and says, you make me president, and I'll pause the gas tax and energy tax. And why did she say that? Was she against the environment? No. She sat there and said, people are struggling right now. Good point. Think about it. Think about all the people that work at fast food restaurants making very little more than minimum wage, trying to raise kids, driving 10, 15 miles to work. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's pause the gas tax. And yeah, we don't mind taking advantage of that too, do we? We absolutely hate taxes. So let's look at what role government should have. Now, that woman, that young lady over in Europe, I forget her name, is it Helga or Heidi, whoever she is, who speaks at these global warming conferences? Don't you love the day she stood up in front of all those world leaders from all those governments and said, here's what I think of what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. That is beautiful. Kind of speaks to that rebellious teenager we all carry inside of us, doesn't it? Okay. Now, let's put on our adult caps. We want government to fix it. Be careful what you wish for. Governments, and in particular our government, if you look at it, their tools boil down to two things. There are two things that they can work with that will really change our life. One is taxes, the other is regulations. Who's up for those? And there goes the dead end. We don't vote for people that want those things. We vote for the person, regardless of their party, who gets up in front of you and says, vote for me. I'm like you. I'm for lower taxes, fewer regulations, and smaller government. That's an American. And that's who we put in. This, in my view, is a dead end. It's not only not going to go anywhere, if by some miracle it gets through, it's not going to last long enough to make any difference. Now, one of the things that both sides have agreed on in the past is we all want clean air, we all want clean water, we all want pristine places to hike, even if we never go hiking. Even our past president, not known to be a green president, said that. We've gone a long way there. We spent a lot of money, we made a lot of progress. Back in the 1970s, President Richard Nixon passed the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. Amazing changes took place very quickly. Most of our major cities look like LA on a bad day. Not anymore. That was done by a conservative Republican president, Richard Nixon. And we paid for it and we got it done. As far as having pristine places to hike, a lot of that was started by Theodore Roosevelt, a Republican president. Now we're on different turf. We can agree on those things, but when it comes down to taking the next step, particularly with decarbonizing, as they like to say, what's the real driver? It's money. It's simply that. So if you go back to when a lot of this started, it was the 1970s. Arab oil embargoes hit, 2 of them. Gas prices surged, everybody got angry. We had to do things like wait in line for gasoline. You know how we are as Americans, we don't like waiting for anything. It was humiliating, prices were going out of sight. This is when we started to get concerned about environmental issues. This is when you started to hear more and more about it. It's resource oil is, we're running short. We don't want to see that happen. Let's take better care of the environment. No, what we're doing is we're taking better care of our checkbook. That's what we're interested in. And this is where I sit there and say, I agree with the people who are against the climate tax, which my guess is where these climate doubters are coming from. I mean, seriously, folks, you really think they woke up one morning and said, hey, I want to be a climate scientist? No. They're concerned about the weathers like the rest of us. Is it going to rain this weekend? I got plans. That's it. They're not there to challenge climate change. Go ahead and show them all the scary pictures you want to of shrinking icebergs. In the end, what they're upset about is a carbon tax being imposed on them. One more way for the government to take my money. And they have a point. Back when this was going on, we found out something terrible. It wasn't just the gas prices were going up. They went way up. You'll laugh. 26 cents a gallon went up to 65 cents a gallon. Back then, that was a lot. But we found the cost of everything going up. Inflation at one point was 13%. If you like 6%, think about 13%. Why? A lot of it had to do with the energy costs. Think about it. Energy is tied to everything. Think about the energy it takes to plant crops, to tend crops, to harvest crops, to process crops, to truck crops, to refrigerate crops. Every step in the process is energy. You make the cost of energy go up, you make the cost of food go up. What about buildings? Think of the energy it takes to process and harvest materials, to truck those materials, to assemble those materials. Energy, energy, energy. You increase the cost of energy, you increase the cost of housing. So you implement a carbon tax that increases the cost of energy, increases the cost of food, increases the cost of housing. What economic group spends the most of their expendable income on those 3 commodities? Poor people, people on fixed incomes. Oh, I can see the ads now. These poor old people living alone on a fixed income. have to decide whether they're going to stay warm this winter or fill their prescriptions. And they can't do both because of the carbon tax. It'll get a politician right into office like that. Why? Because it'll be true. Absolutely true. And for those people say, well, we'll give them a tax deduction. Sorry, most of them aren't paying tax now. Tax deduction is not going to help them. They're just going to suffer with it. Carbon tax is a bad idea. But people do have, how should I call it? They're annoyed by high energy costs. When the cost of gasoline soars up from $3.50 to $4.50 a gallon, what do we say? Why'd the government let this happen? 90% of the time, they have no control over it. Soars, what happens? The politician that's in office gets really nervous because they know we're about to bounce them out. Democrat, Republican, who cares? Bounce them out, put the other party in while the other party's sitting here saying they'll give us lower energy costs. Why? We just hate wasting our money on energy. A funny aside, same is true of electricity. When I lived in Phoenix, I was always horrified by the high electric bills in the summer for the air conditioning. I can't imagine how they're doing it now. The rub here, I worked for the electric utility. I still didn't want to pay a lot on electricity. We hate energy costs. We always say, I can spend that money on other things. And that's how we've been progressing for decades. It's not with the lean of, let's help the environment or let's have a better environment. It's been, how do I get my energy costs down? Well, I hate to say this, after 40 plus years, pretty sad. People in the private sector have no right to complain about government. In fact, the government agencies I've worked with are doing a lot more than the private sector. And why is that? It's because we based this on saving energy. We developed something, I didn't, somebody did, somebody cursed us with this, called simple payback. How much should we spend to reduce our energy use? Well, let's see, how much energy are we saving? Let's look at the added cost, divide by the savings, and it tells you how many years it's going to take to get your money back. Let's stop right there. What does that tell you about the person as far as their interest goes in green and sustainability? How many things do you buy where you ask somebody, when will I get my money back? Before I buy it. Wouldn't think of it. When we want something, we actually buy it. But in this case, no. We say, when will I get my money back? I've got important things to do with that money. Remember I said, you're not going to like what I have to say. This goes on all the time. It's considered standard in the industry, and you as architects see it all the time. You get to the end of a job, and this owner who was so into the environment, they'll tell you, oh, I'm all about green. I'm all about sustainability. Have been since I was a child. Suddenly finds the bids came in, they're all over budget. First person they look at is me. So Eric, what's the payback on that high efficiency chiller? What's the payback? And I know the show is over. Now I'm trying to see it from their perspective, and they might have a point beyond finances. And it goes to just plain logic. Let's look at a simple payback of 5 years, normally considered attractive, although I will tell you most of them sink like a stone. What is this saying to an owner? Well, it says the owner, here's what you got to do. You got to come up with some extra money now. Okay, but don't worry, you're going to get it back. Let's see now. First year, no, you're still in the red. And wait another year. Okay, you're still in the red. There goes year 3. Hang in there. Year 4, don't let go of it. Finally, along comes year 5, and you broke even. How exciting. And we wonder why they turned that down. Honestly, I don't know if I can blame them. But it does state that they don't have an interest in sustainability. Not really, because they weren't willing to pay for it in the first place. But when you get the paybacks of 5 years and you can't get those through, what does that tell you about paybacks that are 10 or 15 years? Well, you can just kiss those goodbye. Even though they'll save a lot of carbon, who cares? Very sad. And it gets even worse because a lot of that private space is leased space. So the owner and developer will say to me, you showed me a payback that I don't even care about. Why? I'm not going to pay the energy bills. My tenants pay those bills. Huge hole in the water line, all the leased and rented space we have out there. And you can't even use simple payback because it won't matter. They're just going to say, that doesn't even interest me. Josh and I worked on some buildings here in Madison. I remember we were determined, we're going to break through this nonsense. And we were general contractors on the job, so we knew all the costs. And we sat there and said, okay, let's build some green buildings using some of the ones that we already had under contract. Let's track the extra cost to go green. And we're going to do the logical stuff, the easy stuff, nothing extraordinary. And we're not going to use focus on energy money or anything like that. And let's see how much more it costs and let's see how they perform. So we did. We did 3 buildings. We certified them through both the LEED system and the Green Globe system. Then we looked at the added cost. The added cost was less than 2%. That's it. No big deal. Energy performance was phenomenal on 2 of them. They were in the upper 85th percentile. That's the actual utility bills. They performed very, very well. All 3 of them had big ravings on indoor air quality. They loved the air quality. They were getting lots of fresh air. So we got excited. And I said, Josh, this was so easy. There weren't that many hard things to do. And they're all within 2% of the budget. He said, well, why don't you write that up? Hey, maybe we can sell that. And we did. We wrote it up. Took it around and everybody was said, good for you. Good for you for doing that. And it fell flat. So what? Big deal. There just is not that level of interest. So, in my moment of despair, I decided to go out and work for myself. Then I'll just be the one suffering, right? But I did need to make money. So I said, I'll offer a slew of engineering services. I'll offer commissioning, I'll offer energy modeling, I'll even offer some HVAC design, get some variety there, get some architects interested. In addition, I'm going to do certification work for Green Globes and LEED. The diversification wasn't an issue. As soon as I hit the pavement, I was flooded with certification work of all things. And the phone kept going and going. It was a year without sleep. It was wonderful. Who doesn't want to start a business and run into that? And I couldn't figure what was going on because the people who wanted to get certified were multifamily of all things. These are the buildings where someone else is paying the energy bill. But the owners were, no, we want to go green and get certified. We want to go green and get certified. And I was working with the people that the environmental community loves to hate, the financial people who only care about money. Well, hello, that's their job. And they're very conservative. And I have a feeling I know the way most of them vote. But they were calling me and calling me. You've got to go certify this building. You got to tell us how to get that one certified. This one. I was running all over the country doing this stuff. Finally, I said, what is going on? Why are the owners just revved up to do this? And they said, the performa. They explained to me what they were talking about. Fannie Mae, which is where they were borrowing the money from. And oh, by the way, so I don't forget, Freddie Mac also has a similar program. I just haven't worked with theirs as much. But Fannie Mae was offering an interest discount, a modest interest discount. And when you plug that in, it became easy to justify high efficiency. They made that the gate. You want a lower interest rate? You put in high efficiency heating and cooling and lighting. Everybody wins. The owner wins. They have a building where the repayment is lower than it would have been if they had gone with a standard building. The occupants most definitely win because they have low energy bills. And keep in mind, we're talking about largely areas of our country which need the money. Lower income earners tend to go into apartments. They get those low energy costs. And by the way, not producing as much carbon. Everybody wins. So this is Fannie Mae's, Freddie Mac's idea. And wow, did it take off. And I suddenly thought, well, can we expand on this? Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting we use government money because that puts you in the tornado. Besides, how much cash does the federal government have? You know, you've been hearing it every day last week. What's their cash on hand right now? Minus $33 trillion. $33 trillion in debt, and it's growing fast. And oh, isn't it fun to be alive? They tried to sit there and extend the debt, and that's really all they're talking about. They extended it for, what was it, 40 days? And the Speaker of the House got fired the next day. Oh, this is going to be fun. You're going to get to hear all about that. I don't want to be a part of that. I do not want government funding at all. That's the tornado. Where can we get the money? Let's talk about other things we like to do that might be more helpful. Investing. We love to invest. Whether it's 401ks or IRAs, just about everybody's got them. Do you have any idea how much money is sitting in our 401ks and IRAs right now? $25 trillion. We've got the money, not the United States government. How did that get there? Incentives. What was one of the biggest incentives? Tax deductions. We're Americans. That's what we want to talk about. We don't want to talk about more tax. What if we could, and I'm going to say this word again and again, give people a voluntary option to put money into low interest loans that go to carbon reduction. Now, relax. I'm not suggesting for a moment that people do this as charity and to prove they're green and sustainable. I think you already know what I think of our basic commitment there. It just doesn't exist. There have to be incentives. That's all. Let's open up another fund and give Americans an incentive to join. And what would that be? So let's look at this. Let's talk about a fund that's used for one thing and one thing only: to build net zero homes in the United States. What's the benefit of buying one of these homes? Given that to be net zero, you've got to go with, and I'm going to use solar collectors as the easiest one, which will increase the cost of your house by 10% on average. Ouch! Love to do it, love to do it. I'm all about being green and sustainable, but when I compare that to putting another bedroom in that house, get real. I don't want to do it, which is why you don't see people doing this left and right, do you? How about this? If you agree to do this, we'll knock a percentage point off your mortgage. Do the math. Those PV panels just became free. All we had to do was knock your mortgage rate down 1%, and those panels become free. You're paying exactly the same as a person with a regular mortgage that doesn't have those panels. The panels are free. They're yours as part of the house value to sell. Oh, in addition, we just knocked your energy bills down to next to nothing. Minuscule compared to what your neighbors are paying. Is that incentive for people to want to go after it? We would see. Where's the money going to come from? Remember, I said it was us. So, I'm sorry, I can't walk there. We are big on 401ks and IRAs. We've put $25 trillion there. Well, I think we all know there was a little bit of a hit in 2008 that we all took. On average, a quarter of our value was taken away almost overnight. We lost $2.4 trillion just like that. How did that happen? It's a really good question. What's your money invested in? You don't know. Oh, the Fidelity Maximum Growth Fund. No, that's not what I'm asking you. What's it in, actually? What's in that fund? What businesses do you have your money in right now in your funds? Don't know. It's too complicated. Besides, if you were to break open that fund and look, you probably wouldn't recognize most of the things you're invested in. You simply trust your money manager to take care of that. Oops. Don't even know what went wrong. Now, if you think that that's a fine way to do things, I also want to make you aware of another thing that happened at the end of 2008. Wall Street took home $18.4 billion in bonuses. They paid themselves $18.4 billion for the wonderful job they did of tanking our funds. Does it bother you? How did they do it? Well, little secret here. It's called fees. Now, if any of you have not checked what the percentage fee is on your 401k, do yourself a huge favor and do that right away. In this example, if you had a 401k that was at $300,000 at the beginning of 2008, yeah, yahoo, that's a nice savings. It tanked to $200,000 at the end of 2008. Well, that wasn't the end of the bad news. They then took a fee of $2,000 to $4,000 out of that thing. It's perfectly legal. And by the way, if you're saying, I can't wait to get to retirement because I can slowly pull the money out and I'll be in a lower tax bracket, well, guess what? They're going to keep charging those fees every single year. Would you like an alternative? Well, let's try this. What about 25-year fixed rate mortgages for net zero homes in the United States? Furthermore, we insist, because we don't want another to be a part of the 2008 situation again, we insist that buyers must have a credit rating of over 700. The mortgage amounts to just 35% of their net pay after all their other loans are taken away, and they provide a minimum down payment, 5%. The old-fashioned rate. People say, let's go back, let's go back. All right, well, in this case, let's go back. Let's go back to the old rules. Why would you do that? Well, if we're giving our money to someone at a low interest rate, we deserve something in return. And what we need in return is transparency and stability. Every time there's a hiccup in the world, I know, these paranoid delusions I have, we could have, a plague breakout, Russia could invade Ukraine. I know, I watch too many late night movies. Those things never really happen, do they? Every time they happen, we take a big hit. Nevertheless, if you look at this, these people, even during the Great Recession, did a pretty good job of holding on to their homes because they've proven their credit worthiness. So what does that do? If you take some money, not all of it, and not even a huge chunk of it, you want to be diversified, and you move it into a fund like I'm talking about, suddenly you have a nest egg that will grow past inflation, but has lots of stability. It's also totally transparent. You know exactly where the money's going. It's going to net zero homes in the United States for people that have a good credit rating and shown that they know how to handle their money. What do we give them in return? A lower interest rate. And here's the one I think you'll really like. The fund manager who's selected can only charge 1/2 of 1%, not 1% to 2%, but 1/2 of a percent. Now, I know that sounds unfair. There are funds out there, though, that do give it out at 0.5%. And I want to point out a couple things. Number one, this is not a hard fund to manage. You only got one thing in it. You're not looking at stocks, bonds, and companies all over the world and everything. There's just one thing in this fund. That makes it easy to manage. We took 5% of what we had voluntarily just because this fund's available and we want the stability. We'd have $1 trillion, which would make over 2 million net zero homes. And what would the fund manager be stuck with? An annual operating budget of $5 billion. I don't know, you think anyone could do that? Manage this account for a mere $5 billion a year? I know we'd be asking Wall Street to tighten its belt here, but maybe they could get by. I'm willing to bet we would find a lot of people who would jump on it. Now, baby boomers. few of you out there, like me, aren't you tired of hearing everybody talk about the problems we create because we're going to retire and bankrupt Social Security and Medicare? What also is true about baby boomers? Number one, we went through the Great Recession. Remember what a good time that was. Watching our 401ks crumble, watching it take years to get it back. Lots of fun. The other thing I know about baby boomers is we've gotten older since then. Now, don't ask me to produce a study. Just trust me, we did. What are our financial advisors telling us to do? Move some of your money someplace that's safe. It's okay if you want to sit there and go at Wall Street and treat it like it is a casino. And if you look at those numbers in red and you get angry with the government, because we all know government's responsible for all the problems, keep in mind, government did their job. When we got involved in the 401ks and it was written right up for you. It's what you signed. They said, hello, this is not a government program you're entering. It's not government guaranteed. There are all sorts of risks. You can lose whatever you put into it. And they have a right to charge you fees. And it's buyer beware. Make sure you're getting yourself into a good deal. Remember? Yeah, they said all those things. And we were like, who cares? I want my 12 or 14%. And that was fine when we were younger. Now it's like, I don't know if the market gets hit again. Do I have enough time? And if you say I have to work to put it back in there, I may not be able to work. So what we see here in my mind is an ideal opportunity for baby boomers to say, well, let me just take a little bit and put it in this fund, something that's more secure. Yeah, the rest I'll throw into the casino and hope that things turn out all right. The bottom line, though, is this. How I see us getting to a fast resolution has to do with knowing who we are and what we value and coming up with a program like this, which is A, voluntary, B, doesn't involve government funding. What does that do? Takes all the political heat out of it. Have you ever seen a politician since the 401k started saying, let's get rid of it? Vote for me. I'm going to get rid of your 401k. Tell you to put your money back in a bank. It would never happen. Even though a lot of people have complained about their 401k, what's the answer from both the Democrats and Republicans when you complain about your 401k? Don't participate. Yeah, you don't like it, don't participate. It's an option for you. There's no law saying you have to have one. Your employer can't force you to participate. You don't like the deal, get out of it. Same thing with a fund like this. You don't like it, don't participate. I don't want a net zero home. Okay, don't get one. Where am I supposed to get a mortgage? The market's still there. Go get it wherever you want. I don't want to contribute toward your fund. Fine. Put all your money into the casino. Why do I think that will work? Because it gives people options. And you no longer have to worry about some government entity fighting it. But there are other benefits I want to point out. Let me make sure I'm not running way over my time. How am I doing? Ooh, 10 minutes. You still have 10 minutes to ask me questions. Let me talk more. Okay. Anyways, the other thing I really like about this is it solves other problems. Wrong way. There we go. That I'm seeing develop in the industry. And again, my opinion, it's okay. Let's go electric. Let's make buildings all electric. You're hearing that, right? Oh my gosh. The problem is, what does it take to make electricity? Lots of fossil fuel right now. We're 20% renewable and the other 80% is non-renewable. I worked in the utility industry 40 years ago. It was 5% back then. It's 20% now. That was 40 years ago. How long is it going to take us to have mostly renewable? We're looking at 2050. Okay, good luck. Good luck. This helps them out. This gives them power when they want it the most. During the summer when it's hot and everybody's running their air conditioner, people in these homes aren't making a demand on the utility grid. In fact, they're probably making extra energy that they're giving out into the grid. The other option I see people pursue, and Josh wouldn't let me go if I didn't bring it up, nuclear power. Let's go nuclear. That doesn't make carbon. Okay. Sorry, I'm a nuclear engineer. I was a big advocate of nuclear 40 years ago. I thought it would have been a great deal. Then along came four meltdowns and one explosion. Now, the explosion, I'm not going to count. That's the Soviet Union. And we all know about the Soviet Union and the way they do things. But 4 meltdowns, really? You think people, when we told them they wouldn't have one in 1,000 years, which is why we have fewer nuclear plants today than we did back then? Good luck. That's fine. You go right ahead and push nuclear. I admire the courage. In the meantime, maybe we should be doing something that we can implement now and get it done. Once again, this helps take care of the problem. It takes pressure off the electric grid, and it's done with solar panels. So, in summary, where I see us going is to build on really the brilliance of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, to look at using low interest money from the private sector to get these things done, not taxes. Make it voluntary, use incentives. Don't hit people over the head with a tax. What you will find out if you do this incentive-based, all those people who are claiming they don't believe in global warming probably aren't going to even care about it anymore. They're going to say, fine, you want to go do that, go do that. Hey, I might even join you. I don't believe in global warming, but I believe in my checkbook. And I wouldn't mind getting more money in my pocket. That is the whole of my presentation. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Got one way back there.
If this isn't implemented by government regulation, how do you keep it from becoming a patchwork quilt of inconsistent and ineffective programs? How do you make something that's consistent and strong?
No, well, that was kind of the point of what I was saying, is that you have a fund dedicated to one thing and one thing only. Now, what you're saying is you could have other funds develop suddenly for people that say have a credit rating of 650 to 700 who put 10% down. And I would agree with what you're bringing up. We don't want to go back to having a complicated fund. You know, that did us no good. I mean, they sat there and even the people that set up those funds couldn't unravel those funds, which is one of their excuses for keeping their jobs after 2008. Well, you can't fire me. I'm the only one that knows what you got going here. So that was part of what I was emphasizing here. I apologize if I didn't do it strong enough. It's a simplified fund. It goes for one thing: American net zero homes bought by Americans who meet the following credit ratings. And, you know, it's well spelled out. But you are right. The biggest problem you get into these things is right away you get people who want to contaminate it with their own interests. So I would say, how do you keep them out? By having us, the people who are going to pay into the fund, agree. I mean, if we sit there and insist it's going to be a transparent fund and such, and they can't get our money otherwise, money talks. Oh, but thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? That's it. Well, that was easy. They didn't even take out their torches, Josh.
We may have some online questions. Heather,
Okay.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We do have a question from a member of our virtual audience. The question is, what are a couple of cost-effective, feasible remodelings idler house owners can do to go greener?
Yeah, first thing you do is LED lights. And you know what I say to architects, not in the home, but in the commercial industry, if your lighting designer is still specifying fluorescent, just do yourself a huge favor and fire them. They don't know what they're doing. Go with the LED lights. I would say go with the high efficiency furnace and the air conditioning system if you can. Those are the big ones. Interestingly enough, Energy Star dishwashers and clothes washers, you know, you think they don't make a difference, they make a really big difference. And they also make a big difference on your water bill. Insulation can be a challenge because I have no idea what kind of house they're talking about, how old it is. But I would say that if you still have money, new windows is a great way to go. Go with the double pane, low E glass. It's the simple stuff that gets you the big payoff. It's not going nuts. Now, if you want to go nuts, that's fine. I can give you ideas on how to do that too. But the simple stuff really gets you there.
Eric, you didn't mention perhaps, but as I remember on those buildings that we did, the extra energy costs in that mortgage were more than offset by the energy savings every month. So our clients had no political leanings one way or the other. There was no through line. It was simply more money in their pocket at the end of every month from day one.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because when people, and this is this thing that I rattle engineers about all the time, and I'll be giving this talk at UW Platteville, and I'll be rattling them on it big time, because it's considered standard in the industry to use simple payback. Well, you know, if you're using a formula that doesn't fit the situation, you're using the wrong formula. Why are they using the wrong formula? The assumption is people are paying for things with cash. They pay for a building with cash. And if they're going to have to take more cash out of their pocket to buy a high efficiency heating system, well, that's complete bunk. They're not paying for it with cash. They're paying for it with a commercial loan. So what you really want to look at is, how does that loan repayment compare to what they're saving on energy? And Josh and I ran into this with a veterinary clinic where the vet was trying to get rid of the green because he found he couldn't afford the building. But when you looked at the energy use on this clinic and compared him to what he had to pay back the owner, who in this case happened to be a developer, I said, you have a choice here. You can either you can hand the owner another $300 a month, which is what the owner was going to charge for the high efficiency, or you can give another $1,000 a month to Madison Gas and Electric. It's really up to you. And, you know, when I hit him over the head with that, he finally said, well, I guess that's a no-brainer. I said, well, if it was my money, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, Josh brings up a very good point about that. In those buildings where the owner is actually going to occupy the building, in this case, the owner didn't occupy, but the owner was providing the building at a cost. It makes no sense to use simple payback. Simple payback is simply stupid. It does not tell you anything about whether or not. It does tell you, though, that green and sustainable is not a high priority. Otherwise, no one would even be asking, what's the simple payback? I know, controversial, but I had to say it again. Anything else? I still haven't seen them light their torches, so I guess I'm safe.
Heather, are we good?
Okay, thank you.